Welcome, everyone, to our Purdue Extension Hot Topics for this month of May. We are very happy to have Chris Adair here with the senior with the small farms. He's the manager out there at the Purdue property. Just kind of a recap. We appreciate everyone joining us live for this season 7 of Extension Hot Topics. The goal of this is to provide education, exposure to our specialists on campus and throughout Extension. So this is nice having a campus location. A successful program today would mean that we would have some folks contacting Chris in the future to go out and tour the farms. So again, we want to give him as much exposure as possible. So I'm going to be quiet. If you have questions, throw them in the chat box and we will field those as we get more folks coming on here. So, with that, Chris, I'm going to be quiet and give you the floor and let you highlight your programming out there on Cherry Street.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeff. So as you said, I'm Chris Adair. I'm a student farm manager. I've been now at the farm for 10 years. It seems like not that long, actually. So it's scary to say 10, honestly. As you said, please ask questions. I'm happy to be interrupted. I do have the chat box up so I can see it on my other screen. So if you please ask questions. But in general, I'm going to kind of talk about the farm site and kind of how we have the farm broken up into different sections, and then what we do around, like what we do with the produce, what we do with folks in the local Purdue community and the surrounding community, and then kind of talk about our internship program as well, and some research. So I have a ton of things. We may not get to all of them, but we'll try. So this initial slide here is is an overhead shot of the student farm site. It's a smaller 3.5 acre site. We have about 2 growing acres at the farm. The farm is relatively well established now, I would say. We're, if not quite well established. We've been at this site for 7 years now. The old for 8 years now. Oh no, it might be 9. I don't know. It happens, time. Um, so we've been here for a while. It initially started in 2010 when I was an undergrad at Purdue. Dr. Steve Hallett, who at the time was out of botany and plant pathology department, just gathered some undergrads and was like, "Do you guys want to start a vegetable farm?" And I was like, we were all kind of like, "Sure, might as well." Um, and so we actually started the old farm site at a property that is no longer usable for farming, but it is under houses. It was across the street from Hort Park, so it's now uh, under the development that is going in there. We moved to the new site. The new site is a little bit different than the old site. It's not surrounded by mature trees, which is great. It does have a nice wood line on the north side, but that doesn't necessarily hinder or shade much of our production, if any of our production. Some of the high tunnels are maybe a tad close to the woods, but it's holistically it's fine. We don't have any issues. The site is very clay heavy soil, so we basically only have clay and silt in our soils. There's pretty much no sand. And in the south or the bottom left corner of the farm, you can kind of see is a bunch of some shrubs and things that is classified as an emergent wetland, and so that can kind of give you a hint at how heavy our soils are. To be fair, I would rather have our heavy soils than very sandy soils, because of watering potential. But that's wrong button. There we go. So to talk about our growing zones, so we have things broken up into now 3 different growing locations effectively. So we have our outdoor production, which are our 6 outdoor blocks in the field. We rotate through these blocks. There are 2 brassica blocks. There is a allium block that is also turning into some carrot production. We have a solanaceous block that has tomatoes, peppers, eggplant, but also we do summer squash in with that because we do landscape fabric in that location, and so uh, putting the uh, putting the squash on landscape fabric is very, very helpful. We have a potato block. It's a very nice block. On this photo, that would be block one, would be the potatoes. Um, and then our final block, which in this photo is block six, and it's empty as of that time last year, but that is our full season cover crop block. So we're really producing crops out of five of our blocks in a season, and really only three of them we're using for a really long period of time. So the initial brassica block where we put our kales and cabbages lasts for a very long time, and then our solanaceous block lasts all season as well. For the outdoor rotation, we rotate because of the brassicas. So the two brassica blocks are separated by 2 seasons. And that's because black rot is a really bad issue that we have out at the farm. It definitely goes hand in hand with our really heavy soils and the water it's able to retain. Um, but the rotation is very important. So we're, doing our best. The black rot is not necessarily getting better, but it's also not getting worse. But we're getting there. And then we have our four high tunnels. They're labeled here 1 through 4. They also are rotated through. One tunnel is a pepper tunnel every year. One tunnel is a tomato tunnel every year. And then the other two tunnels are our quote off tunnels. So none of them will have tomatoes or peppers in it, but lots of cabbage, lots of carrots, not no kale, kohlrabi, bok choys, and then we do a decent amount of ginger in them as well. So this, and then the final location that we actually gained 2 seasons ago are the hydroponics containers. So in the photo, there are 3 containers. Middle one is actually a cooler, which was nice to have. Adding a second cooler has been very helpful. But the 2 outside containers are vertical growing containers. I'll talk about them in a little bit. I have a couple photos, but they have complemented our production really, really well because we can grow lettuce at times that I cannot grow outside. So that, uh, August, September timeframe can be really difficult to grow good lettuce. And so the hydroponics systems are really helpful in kind of shoring up that production at the farm site. So production. So what do we do with all of our food that we grow? So we sell it as a funding stream for the farm. My salary is paid for by the university, which is lovely and awesome. But any student labor, seed costs, fertilizer costs, gas, diesel. If we want new hand tools, if we want new things like that, we have to purchase them ourselves. So we need to make sales. And not only do we need to make sales, we think it's an important part of the farm running as true to a real farm as possible and having outlets for our production because that makes the most impact for the students that come and work at the farm and also have classes at the farm. So uh, having that cycle where we're producing and selling is very important to us. So we sell through 2 CSA programs, which are community supported agriculture programs. We have a spring program and a fall program. The spring program uh, is 10 weeks. Folks will pay generally prior to the 10 weeks starting, and then they'll get vegetables. Well, they'll get a lot of salad greens. We classify it as a salad kit CSA, and so the goal is to provide a salad to those folks every week. The bottom left photo on here is one of our salad kit from I think it was the first week this year actually. So it comes with multiple heads of lettuce. It comes with a mix of mustard greens and lettuce as well. And then we also do some turnips and radishes along with a number of different herbs and things like that, and some microgreens occasionally, but not every week because they're expensive to grow and relatively time consuming as well. Um, but that has worked really well in tandem again with the growing containers. The growing containers are basically the backbone of the production for that because it starts at the beginning of March and then runs through actually last Friday was our final pickup of the season for that program. And then we have about 2 months before our large program begins. So we have a 22-week program that starts at the end of June and runs through the Friday before the week of Thanksgiving. And in both programs, we actually have two share types. We have a full share where you uh, buy in and you pay for every single week of the CSA and you pick up every week. Or we have a bi-weekly option where you pick up every other week. One of our major complaints that we had a few years ago, which are good complaints to have, was the fact that it was just too much at times for people, and they felt like they were wasting things. And so we were trying to figure out how to make that better for those folks so they could participate. And the biweekly share seems to have worked out really well. Gives everybody 2 weeks to go through their vegetables, which has worked out nicely. The photo in the top right is what we would is kind of a representation of what the CSA one of the CSA boxes looked like last year. Um, and with these two photos, they're labeled because we send an email every week. Pickups are Friday for the CSA program. We send an email every Thursday with a photo with everything that's going to be in the box. They're generally not like they're not showing all the full weights or the full counts of things. It's a representative sample of what the box is going to look like. But in general, that works really well to help explain to folks what the crops are. Maybe if there's any, bitterness that might be in some of the crops because of temperatures, or hey, this sometimes we work with Laura Ingwell. She does some sweet corn production, and she does it with corn earworms in mind. And so sometimes when we get the sweet corn from her, they may be infested pretty heavily with corn earworms. And so we tell folks, hey, you don't have to take it, but we do have sweet corn if you would like some. So in general, that email is really important for us, and it's something too that has gone from something that I make every week, the first couple years of the program, to now the students basically write the email and I pretty much just check it to make sure it looks good, and then we send it out. So it's become another piece for the students to kind of work in, and it's also allowed us to um, kind of talk a bit more about what's going on at the farm that week, and then do some spotlights as well on the interns that work at the farm and some of the people that we work with in and around the university that help us, do everything that we do. But in So those are the two major outlets production wise. But we also have begun we selling to a new restaurant on campus called the Lawrence, and then we have a really nice partnership with the human hospitality or the hospitality and tourism management folks out of the Marriott building. They have a coffee shop in there. They have a lunch counter, and then they have a fancier dining sit down location. And all of those are run by their students and their programs. A lot of it is is their lab work actually. And so we sell a number of items to them that they use. And so students are growing things at the farm, and then we're selling them to students that are effectively going to be using it to make a bunch of things. So it makes it, I don't know, it feels really nice and fun. And then we are looking to expand a little bit in sales, and we've been talking with folks from Athletic Dining, and they are quite interested in purchasing from us as well. But we are a relatively small site overall, and we don't want to bite up too much, but we are kind of I don't know. It's always good to have extra outlets just in case. Um, as production goes at the farm last year, we were able to produce a little over 17,000 pounds of crops. Um, and in total, in the CSA program, we used almost 20,000 pounds. And including donations, we used close to 23,000. We had 23,000 pounds of produce that moved through the farm. And that doesn't include things like watermelon or pumpkins that we also received or that we picked up from Miggs Research Farm that's south of town. So there's lots and lots and lots of things that you can produce on a farm, which is great. Um, So we're gonna kind of walk through the growing locations a little bit at the farm. We'll do our virtual tour. I was a little concerned that walking around and using the camera on my phone, it might just be a bit of a might be difficult for folks to see things. So we'll do a bit of a virtual tour. But these are the growing containers at the site. Um, they're put on a big concrete pad. We did lose a little bit of growing ground from it, but that's fine. As I said, it's complemented what our production outside is really, really nicely. And it also provides another outlet for students in the horticulture and landscape architecture department to work in a controlled environment that's different than necessarily just the greenhouse zones. And so we now get more students that work at the farm because of these containers. And that also allows us to be able to kind of overlap some of my students that work generally on the outdoor production and high tunnel production uh, with students that mostly focus on working in the containers. And we're able to do some trading. And so folks can kind of learn a little bit of both things because there are students that really are just very interested in controlled environment stuff and really have no interest in outdoor growing, but and vice versa. But I think it's important that you understand and you know both situations as best you can. So this is a photo of inside the growing container. It's they're very, very cramped containers. They are vertical growing containers as well. So you can see, looking towards the back, you can see plants on a wall. There are four walls in the containers, and then plants are grown in the you can see on the very left-hand side, really close, there are small chambers to grow out your transplants, and then they get moved to the bigger walls after a couple weeks of growing, and then they'll sit in the walls for 5 to 6 weeks, depending on the crop, and then they're harvested and replaced almost immediately. So you can be very, very efficient in these containers with what you're growing and how you're growing it. But there are obviously a number of issues and a number of problems that they have to work through because it is a bit of a finicky system. You do have to be dosing out your fertilizers correctly, and if you don't, it can have a very dramatic effect on the crops in the system. Sometimes too, if something happens and a valve doesn't open correctly or a valve gets closed and you forget to open it back up while you're after you cleaning, you can cut the water off to an entire wall, and then if you do that, your plants are going to die really, really quickly, and if you don't catch it. So um, it's a really nice really nice place to grow, but it can be a bit finicky and a little bit troubleshooting at times. It is run off of LED lights, so there's a panel that hangs down between the system, between the growing walls, and then there are panels on the outside of them. But in general, the LEDs do a really good job. But these containers still do use a ton of electricity. We didn't double how much electricity we used once they were down, but if you squint, we pretty much doubled how much electricity we use in a month once these containers were put on the ground. So they are energy intensive, but in general work really well for us and really enjoy having them at the farm. I was absolutely not convinced when we're going into the project because it's just it just I was losing some ground that I really like to grow on, and so I'm happy that they have been as good as advertised, I would say. Um, this is one of our high tunnels that I haven't talked about that is not in the rotation. We consider this a seasonal high tunnel, so there's no roll-up sides, there's no end walls. It's basically just there for the plastic, and it's mostly to still keep water off the plants, but also provide maybe a little bit of heat and a little bit of frost protection in those springs, especially when we have those late frost. So there are two rows of grapes in there, and then which are between the pieces of landscape fabric, and then the landscape fabric. We basically made it so there was enough space between the rows of grapes that if we wanted to put beds and production in it, we could do it. So what we're doing this year is we're putting cut flower production into those beds, um, because we're working with Laura Ingwell and Wen Jing to look at some preliminary cut flower information, and then hopefully that is able to be rolled into a bit of a bigger grant to focus on maybe some specific problems that we find during the production of these flowers. So really excited about really excited about what's going on in the tunnel. And the really nice thing is that we found is that the grape plants in there, they do not get they basically missed the last like three frosts we had because they were under that plastic and protected. So they are growth wise, they're actually quite a bit further ahead than the grape plants that we have outside. Granted, we only have a few of them outside that are in the screen, but there is a noticeable difference just from 10 feet from being under the plastic versus not being under the plastic. So, and we have found too, production wise, they seem to be about a year ahead in production. So last year was their third year in the ground, but they're producing like a effectively like a 4-year-old vine. So we expect really heavy grape production this year, which I'm looking forward to because they're very tasty. Um, so let's talk about our high tunnel production real quick, and we'll kind of walk through what we have going on. This is not a current photo. This is from last year. But give our tomatoes that are currently in the ground another month or so, and we will look like this. But in the high tunnels, in the tomato tunnel, we have about 455 plants. So there's 8 rows of plants. Everything is spaced 18 inches apart in row, and then it's about there. Each row is about 3 foot apart in the ground, and then we have landscape fabric running between the crops where we're going to walk, and then we use drip tape irrigation to water the tomato plants in the ground. Um, we used to do big sheets of landscape fabric that we had holes cut in it, and that's what we transplanted through. We switched to this a few years ago, mostly because if you have everything in a small hole on landscape fabric, it's very hard to put granular fertilizer down without visiting 455 holes, which is a very time-consuming process. So having that bare ground open like that is very helpful for us to be able to get in there and deal with anything that might be going on in and around that root zone for those tomato plants. So I've really liked this a lot more. And once the tomatoes get nice and big, they shade out that soil quite a bit, and so the weeds aren't super bad. We do have to do some weeding, but this year we're gonna plant a bunch of sweet alyssum down the center of all of these once the tomatoes are bigger, and we're hoping that will make a nice ground cover and also help with weed suppression. So um, with the tomatoes, we're doing a leaning and lowering system, so you can see a string running up through them and up towards the top of the high tunnel. What that means is we are pruning all of the extra growing points off of the tomato plant except for the main growing point. And so we want one big long stem, uh, and then we clip those plants to the strings. And then once the tomatoes get to the top of the trellising system, we're able to let more string out and drop them down on the ground. And then so then we'll get really long-term production out of these tomatoes. So the tomatoes, they've been in the ground now for a little over 3 weeks, and they will be in the ground until probably the second or third week of November. And we will, once we start harvesting them, probably late June, early July, we will get really nice harvests all the way up into November. They will start to fall off, but we still can get some good fruit ripening in those cold times, partially because of the tunnels. We can put those sides down. We can really heat that tunnel up during the day, and really get some of those nice high temperatures that help with the ripening process. So this is one of our biggest and most time consuming processes at the farm too. We spend a lot of time in this tunnel. The students love it.
Chris, I have to make a
Yeah.
mention when we took our tour, the amount of crop you were able to produce in the small amount of space was amazing. And it just was a very cool operation. So, what time of year would be best if they wanted to go see that tomato production?
So if you wanted to see the tomato production, I mean, probably anytime in July would be good because we'll be harvesting by then, and so you'll be able to see the whole process. And by that time, probably have started on. So once the plants get big enough, we start having to bottom prune and start removing leaves and old fruit clusters off of the plant because you want it focused, and some of those leaves they can become sinks for the plant, and so uh, the plants will like shuttle sugars into those leaves and things like that. And we don't want that. We want them to be shuttled into the fruits. So I would say anytime in July, especially maybe late July, would be a good time to see the whole process. Um, but I would say anytime late June and on, we have lots of things that we can see and look at and show you guys.
Awesome.
Um,
Yeah. I was going to say I appreciate that timeline because it looked like we had a few folks who were starting their operations. So to get the most out of a trip, out of the bring out of their buck if they did meet in person. So okay, I'll be
Yeah, and if folks want to come meet in person, I'm happy to spend as much time as needed on walking around the farm, looking at things, talking about stuff. It is part of what I am meant to do as the manager. So, and the students are here to do the work. So I can have fun and show you around and talk about the production and things like that. So, and yes, this is Tippecanoe County. We are technically on Purdue's campus, just the very north side of campus. Yes, main campus. Um, this is one of our off tunnels. I'm gonna actually start blowing through some of this stuff because I have too many things, and I want to get to the student intern part. But this is one of our off tunnels. We have basically mixed plantings in the off tunnels, starting from left to right. We have um, bok choy. We have Napa cabbages. We have ginger, which we've been actually growing for now 7 or 8 years. It takes a little bit to kind of figure it out and get it going, and it looks really small right now, or it looks really small in that photo, and it does. It stays really tiny for a very long period of time in the ground, and you're like, is this going to do anything? And then August hits and it explodes and it gets much, much larger. Um, and once you get past that, we have beets, and then we have some turnips, and then we have some direct seeded radishes, and then on the very end, there's some kohlrabi. So usually our off tunnels are just a rotating mix of different crops. And so as those bok choy come out of the ground, we will go right back into the ground with something new, whether it's direct seeded or a transplant. And so it works out quite well because we really want to take advantage of our space in the high tunnels because they are some of they're our most expensive space square footage wise. Um, so hang on a second. This is our pepper tunnel. So we have a large quantity of sweet peppers that we grow every year. And this is uh, it's also a variety trial. So there are 10 different varieties that are in here. So you can see in each row that about every 5 plants, there's a different looking pepper plant. Um, and that's actually a Petrus Langenhoven, who is the director of the farm. This is his little baby and his project. So we would normally grow sweet peppers in a tunnel like this anyway. But having a variety trial built into it is really awesome and really great that, basically we can get double duty out of the tunnel for what it's doing. And it's really, really nice setup. It's very similar to our tomato setup, just a little bit less space, open bare ground for the peppers. Each row of peppers is a single row of peppers, and then so we get lots and lots and lots of sweet peppers out of this tunnel. The bell peppers do pretty well in the tunnels, but the sweet tapered peppers, man, those things they just don't stop producing until they get hit by a hard frost. So very nice production. This also allows us really long-term production. Our peppers are in the ground. They've been in the ground since early last week, and we will basically harvest them all the way up and through by end of October. And by that time, we'll take a big harvest of a bunch of green peppers at the end. So it works out really, really well. This is also done with just drip tape and landscape fabric, nothing super fancy, nothing crazy or anything. And it works out really, really well. This is our other off tunnel, and this is more of a mix of carrots, beets, and kohlrabi. Again, I do really like growing kohlrabi. It's a nice crop that grows fast. It's kind of a funkier crop that I would say nowadays more and more people are well aware of what it is. Um, but it's something nice that I like to grow. I also really like to eat it, so that's probably partially why I like to grow it. But we do try to grow a decent amount of carrots. The only issue is our soil is so heavy that we cannot actually physically hand pull any carrots out of the ground. We have to go through and use a we have to dig them out of the ground, or we're just going to be ripping tops off all the time. So it's a very time consuming and a laborious process for us. Whereas if we visited uh, Perkins Gooder Farm last year, and they are on very, very, very sandy soils. And it blew my students' minds when he was able to walk over, grab like six tops of carrots, and just rip them straight out of the ground. And he pulled out like 6 to 8 inch long carrots. Whereas we're lucky to get 4 to 5 inch carrots, and we have to dig them out. So I like to do carrots because people in the CSA really like the carrots, but at the same time, um, I have to be strategic and kind of limit at times how many are in the ground because then we have to pull them all out. So that is our full. That is kind of what looks like in our high tunnel production. We're going to go through the field stuff real quick. This is actually a photo of the field from yesterday. So Ashley Adair, who I am married to, she's the she's a statewide organic specialist, and she's based out of the horticulture and landscape architecture department as well. But she has her drone license, and all the nice drone shots and overhead shots of the farm come from her coming out to the farm. So this is actually what our uh, early season brassica crop looks like. So lots of kale, dead center. On the very left, that is our garlic production. And then there's a little bit of parsley, bunch of kale, and then we have some cabbage, and then some Swiss chard, and then basically the rest of that is almost all cabbage. So we're actually kind of going a little crazy on cabbage this year, which not a bad thing. People seem to very much enjoy cabbage. Um, this is what it looked like last year, later in the season. So I'm not sure exactly when this was, but I would say this is more of a end of June, actually probably more like a July timeframe. Um, so you can everything is much fuller, much bigger, and more filled out. And so that is what that will eventually progress to. This is our outdoor allium block currently. So it's difficult to see, but there are 9 beds of onions there. Each bed of onions we put down has 900 spots on it. So that's roughly around 9,000 onions, which is a lot of onions. But the CSA for us, you know, we really want to make sure they have onions, and we have our large program was 155 shares last year, and for basically we had onions in all. We had some onion in 22 weeks of the program. So every week we had an onion, whether it was a yellow onion, whether it was a smaller red onion, or if it was a scallion type crop. So we really want to make sure those alliums are throughout the CSA program, but very large amount of onions. And then this is last year's shot of the onions, probably in that same July timeframe. And so they really fill out and they really take over the beds and do a really nice job of kind of filling out and getting us really good onion production. We do have some rot issues, of course, because it's wet and the soil is so heavy. So we do have a bit more of a rot issue problem with the onions, but it's something that we've dealt with and we'll probably honestly continue to deal with. We're trying to do a few different things, like harvesting them earlier, cutting the tops before drying them down. But I don't know. Things haven't seemed to help too much, but we'll keep trying. This is a photo of last season's potato crop block. So I think last year we were able to get 1,800-foot rows in. This year I managed to squeeze in 2,000-foot rows. We were able to harvest a little over 2,000 pounds of potatoes last year. So I'm hoping we'll be around that 2,500 pound mark this year, which would be great. We again have some rot issues with our potato production, but a lot of times we can find that more so when we harvest them, and so they don't necessarily end up too much in our dried potato stuff. But we do have to go through our dried potato bins and find sacks of goop here and there. It happens. Um, this is a shot kind of what all the ground currently looks like, but that closest block that you can maybe see, that is where the solanaceous crop is going to go this year. We have two caterpillar tunnels that we grow in. So they are basically small structures that ours are 14 foot by 100 foot long, and they're mobile, and we move them every year. You can actually see in about the upper right corner of the photo, you can see a couple stacks of bows in the ground. Those are our two small caterpillar tunnels. We're adding two more this year for a research project. So we're going to have four, which is probably about one or two too many, but can't really complain, honestly. But right now, of course, we're still getting going and we're still getting things in the ground. But these tunnels will be up probably by the end of next week. So that ground will not be bare anymore, beginning next week sometime. This is a photo from last year. So this is what it looks like when the tunnels are up and constructed. Um, and it just mimics the high tunnel production. Basically, it keeps water off the plants, so that helps limit disease on the plants. It keeps heat into the plants as well. Those peppers really like hotter temperatures. Tomatoes are a little, they'll deal with 90 degrees, but they would actually prefer to be more in that 80 to 90 degree time frame or temperature frame, whereas the tomatoes or the peppers are like, give me 90 plus every day, and they'll give you all the peppers you can imagine. In this tunnel, we're mostly doing the two outside double rows are poblanos, and then the middle double row, those are banana peppers. So we do a lot of poblanos, a lot of banana peppers. We do a decent amount of shishitos. We do a smattering of other hot peppers. We do multiple different jalapenos. We do some cayennes. We do some serranos. And then we do some drying peppers that are more from the southwest northern Mexico region, like guajillos and chilhuaco amarillos, things like that. But really, really fun thing to work with the peppers. I really like the peppers because of the just the huge range of things that we can do with them and the different types and styles. It's great. Um, so with the farm, we obviously are. It's the student farm, so it's very student oriented. So we have a lot of classes that come out the farm, and we also have a lab class that comes out spring and fall. The small farm experience class, they are able to come out, and their lab is basically built around working at the farm and helping us do whatever we need to do that day. So a lot of them get a lot of different a lot of different things that they may not have been able to experience in their other time at school. And the bottom right hand photo, the guy in the orange shirt, he's actually from food science, and so he wanted to take the class because he was just like, well, I've worked with a lot of these crops and things, but I want to know more about how they're produced and things like that. So he really loved the class, and so the class is really helpful for folks like that who may not be super tied into and really close to farming like this, but the classes give them an opportunity to get out there and do those things. Um, we also have a number of other classes that come out to the farm through just for two or three visits, maybe a single visit here or there. It just kind of depends on what they want. But we had 8 total classes visit us last year, and that includes the SFS or the system. The oh my goodness, words are difficult sometimes. That class. Where's yeah, I forget. We're gonna move on. The top left photo shows a class that we started a few years ago that I actually was able to be a co-teach, a co-instructor on. But it's hot sauce, it's sauces and pickles class. And with that class, we started making hot sauces in it the first year. Um, It has evolved into making all kinds of things. We've actually still yet to make anything pickled. So we might have to change the class name unless we do some pickling things this year, which we probably will. But for the most part, it's been a little bit easier to do some fermenting, some drying down of different products. This most recent class, students made um, a dry rub, which was really nice out of some hot peppers. And they are another group made a chili crisp oil. And all of the peppers that they used were peppers that were grown by Petrus in one of his pepper trials. And the hot sauces, the vast majority of the hot sauces, especially the gold hot sauce, it's all made from crops grown at the farm. So peppers, onions, garlic, sometimes a little bit of tomatoes here and there, depending on what we're doing. But it works out really, really well. It's been a really fun class for us. And very engaging, I think, for a lot of the food science students, which has been nice. The community work that we do. So we obviously work a lot in and around the community and do a lot of different things with the community. That's really what the CSA is based around, is getting folks in the community to be able to participate in the farming activities that we have at the farm. Um, but there are some entities on campus that we really work closely with a lot. So we work with all 5 cultural centers on campus, and they all participate in the CSA program. So they all get a share every week during the 22 weeks, which is really awesome. And then we use them as an outlet for donations. So if folks don't pick up their bag that week, or we have extra leftovers from harvest and things, we will distribute them to the cultural centers. And then there's also Ace Food Pantry on campus who we will send things to as well. And if for whatever reason we have tons and tons and tons of things, like hundreds of pounds of stuff, we will take it to food finders as well. So we have a really nice outlet for our donations, which is great. And then with the cultural centers, 4 of them, we help with little gardens at their place. So the top left in the photo is the Native American Cultural Center. They really want to focus around doing a Three Sisters garden, so corn, beans, and squash. We do have some trouble growing those because they have chipmunks and squirrels, and they really like to eat a lot of these things. So when we do the beans, the chipmunks really like to eat the baby bean plants. And then the squirrels will wait until the corn is ready, and then they'll eat all of the ears of corn. So last year we actually didn't get any corn production out of it, which was kind of sad. The year prior, though, all the squirrels stayed away and didn't eat any of the corn. So we're not sure what the cause of that is, but it's happening. The bottom left photo is from the Latino Cultural Center. Their garden is more structured in I guess, a home-based garden. So they've got a couple smaller plots. They kind of do some tomatoes, some peppers, a smattering of other things here and there. They'll do some cucumbers and things like that. And then the 3 photos on the right are the Asian American and Asian Cultural Center. They have a nice grass space out back that these 3 centers kind of use uh, uh, for events, and so they wanted to make sure that was still available. And so they worked to put in raised beds, put in planters, and they have a small little hydroponic setup in the in the in their building, and they've done really great stuff, and they really go crazy and plant a bunch of stuff. Last year, they planted so many eggplant around the house. I gave them a bunch of extra eggplant, and I think they took it as a challenge to make sure they planted all of the eggplant. So they probably put about 100+ eggplant around their center, which was great. And then the last center that we actually just started and were able to get some raised beds about middle of season last year is the Black Cultural Center. And so we're starting to work with them again this year to get plants in the ground. And then sadly, the one center, the LGBTQ plus center, we're not able to work with because they are in the basement of Hicks. And it's very hard to grow things in a basement. And we discussed maybe doing a hydroponics system, but The problem with that is it's not a matter of if, but when 25 gallons of water is going to be spilled on the floor. And how do you clean that up? And they don't have floor drains or anything like that. So we decided that it's not worth it, and we'll try to do other things to help facilitate, participation with the center and the farm. So I really like working with the cultural centers. They're really great people. Um, and a lot of them are really into this and really try to get you know, a lot of engagement from their students. Multiple of the centers now have their own gardening clubs that help grow everything, that help with the production. And we also work with them to I try to push them um, to figure out what they want to grow, and potentially even find seed sources as well. And we will help grow those out and all that good stuff. So I really, really like working with them. We are getting close on time, but I'll blow through the research real quick. We do lots and lots of research at the farm. It is all generally very extension focused research, so highly applicable things to farmers in the state, or at least that's kind of our hope. We did. Let me find it. Uh, we had about 7 or 8 projects at the farm last year that were really involved projects, and then we probably had another 3 or 4 that were more bug tracking, stuff like that. So we work with multiple folks in the horticulture department. We work with folks from food science. They do some food safety testing out here. They're just basically checking for E. coli, seeing if E. coli blows in, stuff like that. Um, we work with entomology, specifically Laura Ingwell, to basically they're doing pest tracking in high tunnels and in field production. Um, we work with Maria Belinki to do the garlic production stuff, which has been a lot of fun. And then we do some data collection stuff with uh, Ankita, out of the oh no, ag engineering department. And so that has actually given me a ton of work to do in the last couple of years, but it's been really good and really rewarding for that. And then we'll go to the most rewarding part of actually running the farm, and that is the farm intern. So I would not be able to do anything that we do without the student interns. They are really the backbone of the farm and really make it so we can do what we do. And it gives me time to do things like this. My students are out working right now. I actually had to shoo one away earlier because she got here and I was like, no, I but the students are really incredible. They're very, very engaged. They're very into the farming and the aspects that come with the farming, and in general, just really want to get out there and get their hands dirty and really learn a lot. And I think doing it at a real farm site with real production and real sales outlets, I think just kind of really engages them even more and really makes sure that they kind of stay engaged. We've gone from the first few years I was here, we did a lot of students were I had a lot of students coming and going. They would work for a summer and then usually that was it. Now I have a lot of students that return for at least 2 summers. Sometimes I've had students that have returned for 4 summers. The bottom right photo is Jane. They worked for me for the last 3.5 years, and they just graduated in December. And so some of these folks I've been around for a very long time have really, really helped them get to, I think, where they're at and really build up what they want to learn in their knowledge base that really helps them in the future for them. So these are some more photos. That top left one, they probably would not like the fact that I'm using it, but I'm happy to use it. They actually found my phone. It was unlocked, and I found this photo on my phone later. I didn't realize they did that, which was hilarious. But with the farm, we obviously work very, very hard, but we also that means we gotta take care of ourselves and make sure that we actually have fun as well. And so we grill out pretty regularly. We hang out at the farm at times. We're not trying to be out there getting heat stroke all the time. So we work and we do what we need to do, and we work even in really bad times when it's really gnarly out and really, really, really disgusting out. But Those are learning experiences in and of themselves, and learning how to be able to work in that weather, how to work in those environments, and and not actually hurt yourself, and make it detrimental to you and the people you might be working with. So it's a really, 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 honestly great time, and I love working with all the students, and can't say good enough things about it. Here's more photos of them. The bottom right photo, I think that was a last CSA pickup last season. So very, very just, I don't know. It's a lot of fun. Really enjoy working with them, and can't say enough good things about the students. Um, that looks like we have about a few minutes for questions if we would like, if there are any questions that folks would like to ask, or not. That's fine.
Sorry, Chris. My sound went goofy. I did not hear the last 30 seconds.
Oh, you're fine. I would say if anybody has any questions, this would be I think a good time to ask. I'm happy to answer anything. It can be about the farm. It can be about whatever. I don't mind.
I was gonna say, because you've had 10 years of experience, what crops would you consider for uh, starting off at? You're
Okay.
starting an operation. What can you have success with? What's a little more forgiving versus what has caused you sort of the most grief in terms of vegetable species growing in large amounts?
So, and like when you say an operation, you're like talking like people are like trying to sell these things, not necessarily like a home garden type thing.
Sure, like a community garden, or yeah,
Okay.
it's a
Um,
larger space.
I mean, I think some of the easiest stuff to do, peppers are incredibly easy. They don't take a lot of work trellising wise. They don't take um, a ton of time and effort. A lot of the effort is actually harvesting, which is great. Um, for tomato production and things like that, tomatoes can be easy, but they can also be finicky at the same time. They're kind of a little bit all over the place. It just depends on what you want to do with them. If you're going to grow them outside, I would highly recommend trying to grow uh, semi-determinate to determinate slicing tomatoes. Grow multiple sets of them, and then. But if you have a high tunnel and you can do leaning and lowering, I would highly recommend growing cherry and grape tomatoes in that system. Basically, all the tomatoes we grow in the high tunnels now are cherry and grape tomatoes. Uh, and see recommendation on pepper and tomato varieties for outdoor production. For tomatoes, I'd say Celebrity Plus is probably it's the best tomato I have the most luck with outside. We did grow a tomato called Galahad last year, and that did quite well. Um, but in general, um, what I would say is initially when you're looking at something, look for high disease resistance, especially if it has multiple disease resistances. That's very, very helpful. Especially in a place like us where the soil is so heavy and water gets retained, bacterial diseases and fungal diseases can be a bit of an issue. Um, that's also why putting plastic over the top of things can be very helpful. For peppers, variety wise, if you're looking for a good bell pepper, um, oh no, hang on. Um, Flavor Burst is the best bell pepper that Petrus loves it. It's pretty much, I mean, and I do too. It's one of my favorite bells to grow. As for tapered peppers, I would grow something like a Carmen, or there's a Carnito Rosso. That's a newer variety that came out. That's a really, really nice one. It's been very, very productive. And it continues to be productive. So some things that we kind of find with a lot of the bell peppers, not all the varieties, but a number of the varieties will do maybe a couple big flushes or so, and then after that's kind of difficult for them to continue. Like they kind of quit setting fruits at time, whereas the tapered peppers, they kind of more so act as like an indeterminate tomato type, where they kind of just keep going and keep going, and they really only die off once they get hammered by a frost or it gets too cold for them. Um, so um, so in general, I just like, I look at potentially disease resistance, and in general, just like looking at ease of use. If you want some other information on pepper varieties specifically, I think if you look up Petrus Langenhoven and Google sweet pepper variety trial extension, that should get you some of his extension publications. And I think he just put together one that goes through all of the varieties that we've grown in the last like 9 years at the farm. We've done over 50 varieties. And for the most part, there's about 15 to 20 of them that are really, really good. So okay. There was an earlier in the presentation, you mentioned growing microgreens. Why did I stop or slow down? So for the most part, I just wanted them to be um, a part of the CSA program. I don't want it to be in the CSA program every week necessarily. I do because the seed cost is pretty high in growing them. If I was selling them directly to somebody, that I wouldn't have nearly the same issue with that, and I would try to grow as many of them as possible and sell them because for a very long period of time before COVID, we were able to sell microgreens to the dining halls at $30 a pound. And that was a phenomenal sales outlet for us when it came to microgreens. Because there was a point in time where we were selling between 30 and 35 pounds a week to the dining halls. And that adds up quickly. And I loved it. And I would love to be able to get back to something like that, but it does not seem like we'll necessarily get to that. Also, Jeff, I know it ends at 1, but I'm happy to stay a little bit extra to answer people's questions as well if folks are willing to stay. Um,
Absolutely, yeah. We'll keep the recording going until about 1, but no, if people would like to stay on and that, feel free to throw your questions in the chat box, folks. And then I did also throw the post-program survey in there, if you folks don't mind taking a minute. Before we get you back on questions, because you got some good ones coming in. For our June hot topics, our invasive species update is going to be brought to us by Bob Bruner. He did speak with us, but it was a couple of years ago. So he'll do an update on invasive species. So it looks like there was another question come in, Chris. So I'll let you take it away with that.
yeah, well, there's one that I missed earlier. So, are there any crops you've attempted to grow and simply not had success with? I would say generally no. I think there are enough variety selections out there that you can find a variety that will work well for you. I've absolutely had varieties that I do not like and that fail. Or, they don't do well enough that I would like to keep them around. Um, but in general, I would say it's, I can't really think of a crop off the top of my head that we tried to grow and I was like, absolutely not. We're never doing this ever again. Um, because usually those crops I tend to try to grow again, honestly, a lot of times, because a lot of times there can be things that happen that are not necessarily the crop's fault or your fault, and so sometimes it's good to give them maybe a couple or a few chances at it, because you can kind of nail some things because there are varieties of tomatoes that I wouldn't necessarily use in the high tunnel, like the slicing tomatoes. They start to drop fruit or they start to drop flowers regularly because of the heat. They have massive coring issues, so they get really hard on the inside, mostly because it's a combination of lack of calcium, and heat and direct sunlight. We can fix the calcium issue. We have no issue with calcium, so it's a heat and a direct sunlight issue, and that's something that we can only fix so much of. And so instead of trying to keep growing slicing tomatoes in the high tunnel, we are just moving our production to be more focused outside on them because we can grow them pretty well outside, and then focusing on cherry and grape tomatoes inside the tunnel becomes better, um, with fruit setting and things like that. If you want a really nice cherry tomato, uh, or grape tomato, I'll put it in the chat. Clementine is my best most favorite, most bomb proof of all time tomato. And it tastes pretty good as well. It has a nice flavor profile. I've had it set fruits in last year when we were, the field was 110, 115 out. They were maybe not necessarily setting fruits, but they weren't dropping their flowers and dropping fruits off the plant. So, and if anything can do that, I'm all about it. It's really amazing. Um, okay, any experience with raised beds to address clay soil? So we we used to do a lot of raised beds. Um, and then I decided I didn't have the space to actually run raised beds anymore because when you do raised beds, it creates a space, an extra amounts of space between the bed tops that you can't plant, you can't do anything with. So what we've done is instead of doing bed production, we're pretty much just putting it straight into the ground now. And we'll do blocks of things. So when we do the cabbage, instead of doing like 3 rows of cabbage, a break, and then 3 rows of cabbage, we're just going to put all 12 rows of cabbage in one big block and weed that out and try and do it in one big go. But we did start bringing raised beds back for things like the onion production, partially because it helps keep the soil softer. And then so when we're using some of our weeding tools, it works much better from the beginning because some of the tools don't work very well in really hard, crusty soil. So you know, I would think if you're looking at um, making raised beds, I would do it if you're on clay heavy soils and you have pooling problems. Our farm site is slanted enough that water sheets off of the fields pretty well. And so we don't have pooling in the fields. Um, if we had a bunch of pooling occurring in the fields, then I would absolutely think about doing more raised beds, just because that will give you a little bit drier ground quicker to use, and it potentially will help limit some of that disease buildup that could occur. But in general, um, I don't know. Raised beds, I think, are if you want to, you can. If you don't, you don't have to. And definitely a particular, I guess, reason to do things. Wait, there was one more though. Oh, do I utilize low or no-till methods? And if I do, have I experienced with any living walkways between beds? So generally, we are very till heavy at the farm, and we do quite a bit of tilling. We do use a harrow and not a rototiller to till now, and we only use our BCS walk behind tractors. We do have a larger tractor that I used to use a 4-foot rototiller on. Um, but I kind of hated it just because of how much compaction we were getting from it and how much it just kind of beats up and smashes the soil. The harrows, the tines spin kind of side to side in a circle, and so they're not churning and going up and over because that pressure on that bottom scoop of the rototiller really compresses that soil, and that's why you get a nice hard pan from the tillage. With the harrows, that helps limit the hard pan. On our soils as heavy as we have, though, we are still creating a hard pan even with that implement. Even though you can read things that will say, "Oh, it doesn't create a hard pan." I think that's definitely soil dependent. If you're in a sandy soil, it probably, it's not going to create a hard pan, but for us, it absolutely does at times. Um, so we've mostly been very focused on tillage, but the last couple of seasons, we have really tried to kind of try to change some of that. And I'll actually, oh no, oh, 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 oh no. Okay, so in the bottom right hand photo here of the research, so this is something that we've started doing a few years ago, trying to play around with doing stale seed bedding. This is a different, normally you would stale seed bed with a silage tarp, so a black plastic, that one side plastic and a white on the other side. Um, this for the onion research, we found that using that in early spring, it doesn't get enough heat into the soil to get grasses to germinate. And so what we started doing is we were like, well, we have a bunch of extra high tunnel plastic that we removed. So we could put clear plastic down, uh, and we did that actually showed significant differences in getting grasses to germinate. And then we were able to once things were germinated, then we came back through and put a black piece of plastic over it to knock all the light out and kill everything. And just to explain what stale seed bedding is real quick, stale seed bedding is effectively you're gonna take your ground that you want to use. You can till it beforehand. You don't have to though. We've not tilled before, and it's worked out quite well. But you want to put that plastic on the ground and it heats up the soil. It encourages weed seed germination. And then once they get up, there's no sunlight for them to use. And so they use all the energy in the seed and they die. And then you can pull that plastic off and you can transplant into it. You can direct seed into it. Um, but as long as you don't disturb that soil, it will give you anywhere from 4 to 8 to even a little bit longer at times weeks of weed-free pressure, basically. Things will start to germinate, but they tend to be much slower. And it's gonna take a number of weeks before things begin to start germinating again. So that's one way we've gone about knocking out some of our tillage. And then some of it too is just in the high tunnels, we're planting so tightly and we're weeding so well that sometimes when we pull out all of our cabbage plants, you can literally, there's no weeds at all. So you can just go straight back into it and transplant again. So it's, I would say, it's somewhat similar um, to a stale seed bedding, but you're using plants to kind of cover up and block all that sunlight. So we hope to continue doing even more stale seed bedding. But I did lose one of my big pieces of plastic into the woods uh, earlier this year because it got very, very windy, and then uh, 330 by like 100-foot piece of plastic is pretty heavy. But 50 plus mile an hour winds, it's not heavy enough sometimes, even with a bunch of sandbags all over it. Um, so it literally ended up in the woods, like 10 foot up a tree. And so we don't have as much good plastic anymore as we did for that setup. So we will continue doing the stale seed bedding, and something that I'm going to try next year that I actually really hope to do is, so in the top left of the photo that you can see here, we have we put a cover crop down and then we rolled the cover crop down as with a roller crimper, um, and then we planted the garlic through it. But what I want to do this year is I want to grow. So this is a cover crop called sun hemp. It gets very, very big, very, very large, has very uh, thick stems that are very carbon heavy. And so what I want to do is roll them all down for my, to do a full block in it this year. And then I'm going to roll it all down in the fall. And then in the spring, I'm going to come back through and I will tarp the whole setup. And then we will come in and transplant all of our kale, all of our cabbage, and go into it with our brassica block initially. And then hopefully that gives us weed suppression on kind of two fronts with that. And I don't know, it could be a huge mess. It could be a very big mess because there's a lot of plant material. And if we get a bunch of grasses start growing through it, it's going to be really, really hard to weed it. But I'm hoping that we can, using the cover crop and then using the stale seed bedding, we can potentially knock out an entire tillage setup for us for one of the blocks every year, which would be great. Um, so
Well, just real quick,
so
I'm gonna go ahead and stop the
yeah,
recording. But Chris, if you can keep
okay.
going,
Yeah.
we appreciate you having you on. So the recording's gonna stop, but we can hang around for a bit.